This segment is brought to you by JigMasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to JigMasters.com and use promo code PNF20 and save 20% off your next jig order today.
Welcome to Paddle and Fin, an offended podcast of all things kayak fishing. Where our hosts are a bunch of long-time fishermen who decided to get in the kayak fishing world, and guess what? They're taking you along for the ride. So buckle in and welcome to Paddle and Fin.
Da, 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 da. Sorry we're late here, folks. Having some technical difficulties. If y'all can just give me a thumbs up, make sure you can hear me. We're going to get this thing started here. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. And yeah, man, we got a pretty epic guest this evening, Mr. Dusty Yakker himself. We are currently troubleshooting some issues, but that's okay because I wanted to go through a few things with you guys anyways. If you're just tuning in, please share the stream and we'll go from there. But yeah, just want to give a quick shout out to everybody that came by the booth at the indie show this past weekend. It was cool meeting a bunch of you guys that tune into the podcast all the time. So just wanted to say thanks, everybody. If you're just tuning in, share the link down below the stream here. And yeah, we got Dusty Yakker in the house. Let's get him in here. What's up, dude?
Hola.
Finally got our issues worked out.
Buenas noches.
Yeah, man. How you been?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm looking forward to the thaw of spring.
Oh, you're telling me, dude.
I mean,
I was down at the Indianapolis Boat and Travel Show this past weekend, and I think it was Sunday. Yeah, Sunday. I walked out in the afternoon, and it was like 55 degrees, and I'm like, I should be in a boat, not stuck here in the expo here. So
it just goes to show you, you know, how wild the Midwest is. You know, one day it's this, one day it's that. One year we're fishing in February, the next year we're like wait till April for ice out.
Right. Yeah,
Bonkers.
it's like I always tell everybody, you know, in Chicago it'll be snowing one day, the next day it'll be 70, and the following day we'll get 3 inches of rain. You know.
Yeah.
So,
How was the show? How was
it was really busy, man. I tell you what, man, that Indiana Boat Travel and Sports Show is huge. I was down there with Jackson Kayaks, helping out moving water outfitters, and
very cool.
it was insane. It was insane. There will be I'll give a little spoiler alert. Mr. Hoover was down there. He was in the booth right next to me. And when it got a little slow, he was pitching a frog across the aisle, putting his rod tip down towards the ground, and this frog was hidden between a couple kayaks next to the demo pool. And as some ladies would come walking down the aisle, he'd start reeling it in real slow, and you know, they'd think it was a mouse or something scurrying across the floor. So we had some cameras, or he had some cameras set up, got some reactions and stuff. So it was a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun. So saw a lot of familiar faces, saw a lot of new faces. So it was good, man. It was good.
Yeah, we wrapped up the local show at Tinley Park. You know, we had the fleet of kayaks in the pool there, so that was a lot of fun. People get a kick out of being able to hop in one and just kind of test.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I saw Mr. Kurt Smits down in the Hobie booth down there, so I think he'll be back there this weekend as well. So we'll get into that conversation here in a little bit, but yeah, man. Those of you that may have been sleeping under a rock and don't know who Dusty is,
What?
yeah, Dusty, the Midwest Yakker, Dusty, the smallmouth slayer, you know, Dusty, the king of smallmouth. I mean,
Dusty, the average kayak fisherman. I mean, you know, that's just how it goes. Have a little more time here and there.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I hear you. So, I mean, that you have an interesting aspect because you get your summers off. If you guys don't know Dusty, he's a school teacher. So his summer's time is spent pretty much strictly on the water, right? I mean, am I wrong by that?
No, you're not wrong. And increasingly so. You know, last year I was able to, last year, you know, I consciously wanted to like kind of dive head first, like just kind of be full in and kind of see what it was all about. Super interesting, was fascinating. I mean, I know looking like many years from now, looking back, I'll be very fond of the memories.
Sure.
But what were we saying, man? I had a brain.
No, you dove head first in this last summer, you know?
Yeah, I dove head first into it. So this year, be a little more calculated, but I'm looking forward to it, man. There's really a lot to there's really a lot, man.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing last year, man. But I mean, obviously, you had a little bit more experience under your belt and quite a resume, so to speak, going into last year. You know, between fishing MKT and KBL, some Angler of the Years and stuff like that.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that because I think I kind of had a good path into it. I started like locally. I started small.
Sure.
And you know, got some experience under my belt and then worked my way into something, you know, a little bit bigger. You know, was the some of the national stuff I did last year.
Yeah, right on, man.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, it seemed to work out pretty well for you for the most part, man. I know you had a few struggles along the way, but
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, looking back, I think I was real lucky to kind of have some of the success that I did. I think, you know, personally, I missed out on a couple bigger opportunities for a win, maybe here and there, but just how tournaments go. But yeah, looking at some of my stats and looking back, I was, you know, often, you know, in the top 10 and getting a check and in the money. So I feel pretty good about that. I also know how things go. I mean, I've been reading Bassmaster, watching tournaments on TV for 30 years. You have a good year, then you have a not so good year. So you know, you just never know how it goes.
Right.
I mean, it could be something as simple as beginner's luck.
Sure.
You know, the competition certainly isn't getting worse.
Right.
I mean, it's just getting way better.
We need to figure out a way to change that, man.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, you know, that's another topic. I mean, I know you had mentioned some of the things briefly and generally that you want to talk about, but
yeah,
the speed at which people can get information, the speed with which people have access to information, people that are 12, 13, 14 years old can really, like, you know, absorb and like ascertain things that took me years to
sure
kind of have access to, even in written form. So it's kind of that way.
That's an interesting subject. So say we go back 20 years and you had that source at the tip of your fingertips. Do you think you'd be in a lot different position?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I would be in a different position just merely in terms of access to information and the speed in which you can get it. But I think on that note, you know, what kids have access to today with respect to high school fishing teams, scholarships and the whole collegiate trajectory for getting into, you know, the best scene in the tournaments is unreal. And, you know, it's kind of foreign to me, unrecognizable, because when I was young, those options didn't exist. Had they existed, I think my whole mindset towards, you know, what I wanted to do, you know, with respect to fishing would have been entirely different.
Sure. No, I completely agree, man. I give my son a hard time. He just graduated from high school, and it's like they got a bass team, and I'm like, dude, do you know what I would have done to have that back in my day? You know,
I've been talking to some of the high school coaches and talking to them. I've arranged to like go in and talk to their team and like demonstrate the Hobie and stuff like that. But just talking to them and getting kind of a feel for how it works, and it was interesting. Hearing from the different people in the different regions, and some teams have access to a lot of resources, some teams don't have access to as much resources, and
sure,
it was just kind of interesting talking to them and getting their perspective on what they do.
Right on. So have you talked to some of these young kids and coaches and stuff? Is there an interest in the kayak thing? Like
I have, and there is. Kind of as it stands now, or as I've talked to some people, what they have access to is basically, the luck of the boats that are available from the dads, or boats available from the coach, or maybe borrowing a boat and gear and tackle of that nature.
Right.
Some kids obviously have different resources than others, but it's interesting that you talk about that because. With some teams not having access to, $20,000, $30,000 and $40,000 bass boats and the gas and the overhead that comes with all that stuff, kayaks become a viable option. So I can easily see a scenario in which, there's a high school kayak league or people are competing in kayaks and, kind of doing that thing.
I think I read somewhere it was either down
maybe there already is.
south or something. Like there's a couple schools that are starting to look into doing that. It's interesting, man. I didn't think we'd go down the youth path, but I think it's a great topic, man.
Well,
I mean, you look at Dylan Fuqua, Jackson Orr. I mean, those kids are both getting scholarships right now for bass fishing, and it's cool, man. I'll never forget that moment up at La Crosse at the Trail Series Championship, and Hoover gave Dylan that scholarship, man, and just seeing his old man balling,
that's an incredible moment. I'm familiar with both duos. I'm familiar with Dylan and his father. I'm familiar with Jackson and his father. I'm close to both of them on the trail. I mean, we often fish together and run into each other and launch from the same launch ramps and stuff like that. So it's really neat. It's really neat to see. And I've often remarked to other people, my peers, my age, how incredible that is and how neat that would be to have, that kind of support and to be able to do that kind of thing. I can't really speak for Dylan, but I'm quite sure that he gets homeschooled.
Yeah.
Or has sort of homeschooling. So, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of a unique perspective. I wonder how that kind of, comes out. But it's a really cool opportunity for those young men, and they have fantastic fathers that sort of guide them.
Yeah, and I couldn't think of two better kids, man. That
I know, totally.
Great representatives for the sport.
I know, like me at 15. I mean, I was a child. I would be so immature. They're very composed and they handle themselves very well in the water. It's very cool to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I've spent a lot of time with Dylan and his dad this last season. Traveling around, we'd bunk rooms together, stuff like that. And not only that, but like shout out to Jackson. It was my birthday last week. Jackson texted me. He was like, "Happy birthday, dude. Hope you have an awesome day." And I was like, "Yeah." I didn't expect that from the kid,
Well, he's all over the place. I'm not sure, what can't he do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. A
lot of energy that kid.
Yeah, I see Dylan's tuned in right now. What's up, Dylan? So that's kind of cool. Just run through here real quick, man.
What's up, Dylan?
We got Robert, Kelly, Ricketts, Eldridge, Duke, Mr. Hams, Jacob Ruff, Robert, Brock Howe. What's up, brother?
What's up, Brock?
Just name a few of you guys here. But yeah, man, it's interesting, dude. I think it's cool to see the sport kind of, getting the youth involved. Obviously you go anywhere nowadays and kids are just doing this nonstop.
Well, don't get me started on technology. But
well, you're a school teacher.
I see of the pros and cons. I see a lot of the cons of it, but
yeah, right.
just getting back to the youth thing. I mean, just from a kayaking perspective, you took away my gummy bears. Just from I shouldn't be chewing during an interview, but I mean, this is sort of like
we're good, man.
We're family. We're at the table. You know what I
mean? Exactly. That's the feel we want for this.
Right, but the kayaking thing, just the overhead, overhead. Getting back to like what would have been different from if we were younger and stuff. If I was offered a platform like a Hobie, when I was 16, I'd have been over the moon. I mean, the vessel, the platform, being able to do what it does with the pedal drive and stuff. I mean, that would have been like the ultimate sort of thing. A bass boat, even at a time with my father, it wasn't realistic. It wasn't financially realistic. It wasn't something that we sort of did. Eventually, it got to that point, which was cool. But I think it's just more practical. It's more pragmatic for somebody to kind of start with and do that.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, I remember when I was 16 years old, I used to rooftop a 15-foot Coleman canoe on my Ford Taurus.
Dude, I remember. I'll never forget. I used to watch. Not used to watch. I remember watching the day that my uncle's got like a 12 or 14-foot Coleman, like a crawdad. The Coleman.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it came like in pieces. It was like it was like wrapped in plastic, like all put together. And they were drinking all day.
Yeah.
It was like 115 degrees. They were trying to put this thing together, and I think it took them much longer than it should have. And
sure,
it's kind of glorious when it all came together, and we got the trolling motor on the back. They were all high fiving each other, and you get out on the boat, and it's kind of nice to get off the shore and the pier and stuff.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, that was sort of my entrance into getting out on a lake and getting out and being able to go to different spots and stuff. Just the crowd.
Totally, man. I mean, I was fortunate as a kid. My old man had a fishing boat. He used to fish a lot of local events up on the chain of lakes here in northern Illinois, and he'd travel around, Illinois doing some small tournaments and stuff. So once in a while, I get to go pre-fishing with the old man, and kind of get my feet wet in that aspect. And then, if not, I was in that Coleman canoe, man, just ripping around, and I used to stand and fish out of that thing too. So,
my uncle got into artificial lures. He was like the first in the family to get into artificial lures. It was almost like a scandal or something. Like we were used to like earthworms and live bait. The guy's got like one day we come over and he's got like the hat with the patches, fisherman and bassman. And like I remember the smell of like the man's jelly worms and like that came in this like free pack, and he was like, I was like a wide-eyed, bug-eyed kid. I mean, I was
right.
Influence, I was like, holy cow, that sounds so cool. And I would watch the shows and stuff, but I like the worms and the leeches and the minnows and stuff, and my dad too. So shortly after that, my dad did a 182. He sort of like followed my uncle, but my dad took it like 5 levels up. He started. Like the nice gear and like looking at the tournament scene. Next thing you know, he enters the tournaments, and these were like the old like Midwest bass, like old Red Man ones that eventually became well and stuff. And he would take me along, and I would be like a co-angler at some of them. It was really neat. It was a really cool experience.
That is cool, man.
Then he bought a bass boat and used that for 2 or 3 years, and then kind of lost interest and put it in storage. And eventually, he became ill. But that was like sort of my little introduction, my little kickstart into not only fishing but bass fishing and competitive fishing in the tournament scene in general.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, we have very similar stories, man. I'm sure we could talk about that all night.
People often do, man. So, no, kind of individual and unique, but everybody shares common threads and whatnot.
Absolutely. Well, that's cool, man. So let's dive into 2020, man. We got so many opportunities on the table right now.
I'm excited, but I'm also very nervous, man. It's it's very daunting, if you will.
Right. Well, so going back to seeing Mr. Kurt Smits down there in Indiana, it was myself, Kurt, and Sam Jones were standing around talking at the end of Sunday. Kurt's like, "You're going to Logan Martin, right?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "What? Come on, man." And I was like,
"You sound just like him."
Sam said the same thing, or Josh Eldridge told me the same thing when I was telling him the story, and I'm like, I just can't do it, I can't make it just for life reasons, work and things like that. But it's funny, man. We were talking about it. What a stacked field that first bass event's going to be.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I still, physically and mentally, I think I'm there. I mean, I know I have till Thursday, I believe, to pay. It's really dicey at work. I mean, in a best case scenario, I'd fly down there, no practice.
Right.
Probably get there in the middle of the night on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Just go to a launch, seen the lake, and just,
go out
send
there
it. Just send it. But I mean, no guts, no glory. But I mean, that's asking a lot. That's I mean, that's the long con. Ridiculous. But the beauty of it is that I might be able to do that. I could justify it by soaking up the Bassmasters Classic a little bit, being able to participate in it, and then maybe hopscotch my way back north with Duke and the crew, do some filming.
Yeah.
Stop at some dank spots along the way, try to catch some cool bass,
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of great water between here and there, my friend.
Oh, man. I mean, it's the great American road. I mean,
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, we got bass coming onto the scene. We got Hobie stepping it up a little bit more this year.
A little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean,
they stepped it up.
I think I saw a post earlier for the Lake Fork event. They already got like 130, 140.
Yeah. No, you know what? I don't know the numbers. I know it was over 110 the last time I saw. So, I mean, if it's 120 or 130, it's a week out or something. When is it?
I don't know if it's this weekend or next, but I know it's coming up here.
Yeah, it's this weekend or next. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Then this weekend we also got the first KBF Pro Tour event down on the Claremont chain down in Florida.
Yeah, it's the 22nd and 23rd on Fork. So. Yeah.
I mean, it's
coming up, man.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, there's just so many opportunities this year, and it's going to be incredible to see all these events unfold, man. And going back to the Logan Martin event, just the names in that list. And I mean, I'm sure it's the same way with the Hobie event as well. I mean,
yeah, I mean, talk about stacked fields for sure. I did look at the Hobie roster. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I did not look at the Bass roster, but I mean, all over Facebook, buddies and friends. I mean, everybody's been talking about registering, and that's just a field.
Yeah.
Hammers. So yeah, it is interesting to see how it all plays out. Even more specifically, being able to watch like the live leaderboards, like just whether even if you can't be there, it's kind of cool to live vicariously through it and like to check out the leaderboards and like see some of the and like kind of like get a little bit of that. I know this year. A lot of the various entities are picking up their in-game coverage, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Scott Butcher did a really cool job with the 10 over there. The stuff that he was doing with the drones and the coverage, that was kind of nice to see. And I know that AJ does a great job with some of the way that they cover what's going on over the weekend at the Hobie Opens too. So.
Right. Yeah, with it, I know AJ does like the updates throughout the day. All the lives that Butcher did down at the 10 and the 10 Invitational were phenomenal.
Yeah, I know. It was really cool to see that.
That event in itself, man, is just unbelievable. I mean, those guys got hooked up big time, man.
I was at work and I just couldn't really. Every 30 minutes, every 20 minutes, every bell that rang, I'd take a look at it, see what was going on. I mean, I was definitely a hook spectator. I mean, it was kind of nice to see.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. So with all the different opportunities and things like that, man, are you going to focus on like one certain thing, or are you just going to kind of spread yourself out between them?
Yeah. I mean, probably the latter. I can't really focus on one specific thing because, I've come to realize, that it's just my opportunities to fish are bookend by work.
Sure.
And, my line of work, I certainly have personal days and sick days, and, taking one here or there, or maybe like a set there is cool, but to piece them together in the way that you have to do to accommodate for travel and maybe a day of practice or something like that is really tough.
Right.
So it's really hard to consider a series like, let's say the Hobie Bass Open series or whatever, something I truly want to finish or start from beginning to end. I can't. So, considering things like end of year championships and Angler of the Year, these would be harder for me to qualify. Certainly not impossible, but just harder. So for me, I think that I might, cherry pick, events here and there, and kind of have, and with all of these, with all this stuff available, it's kind of easy for me to do so.
Right.
So yeah, I'm all over the map this year. I hope to be on Logan Martin. I'd say like right now it's at like 80%, 85%.
Okay.
Whether or not I have to, just kind of zoom down there the day before. I'm definitely gearing up for the national championships, the KBF NCs at Gunnersville, because it falls right in the heart of my spring break for school.
Nice.
Travel, pre-fishing. I'm real pumped. It's a huge field of competitors. It's huge.
Right.
But it's a bucket list lake. It'll be fun to break down, challenge myself, and kind of actually fish a lot of cover that it'll probably be a little early, but maybe see some things I kind of haven't seen because I've never been on that lake or even really in that region.
Sure. So let's break that down real quick. So I forget who I was talking to about this, NC, I think they got over 600 people signed up as of right now.
Oh man, geez. That's a lot.
What are you going to do to get yourself out away from the crowds and things like that?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is not think of 599 other anglers.
Right.
The first thing I'm going to do, mentally, from pretty much from day one, it's always been me versus me. I'm very comfortable with that. It's a very familiar battle.
Right.
In terms of getting away from the crowd, like you asked, that it is a concern of mine. I do address that. I don't like to fish in a crowd. I have to, but I definitely love main lake points to myself, coves to myself. I love, looking left and right and behind me and not seeing
anybody.
Little light, like when you're, when you're stationed, when you're going to your spot in the morning.
Right.
I'm very comforted by that. But if it so happens you run into a handful of people at the launch or during practice, it's apparent that you're on fish and you're seeing people. It is what it is. It's it's just something that you got to deal with as a competitor. I have Lake Gunnersville is actually one of the lakes I've probably been doing the most map study of and taking a closer look, doing a lot of internet scrubbing and stuff like that. And man, geez, I don't really recall there being more information available on a particular lake than Lake Gunnersville.
Right.
It's an iconic, renowned fishery. You can have incredible days on there. There's some really big fish in there. Yeah. And it could be a little daunting, and it is daunting, but I've kind of dissected this lake a little bit. I by no means have I poured over the sections of maps and stuff. I have a few areas picked out. I've zoomed in, on those areas and kind of considered different scenarios. But there's really only so much you can do because it's more than a month out. Sure.
You don't know what conditions.
Yeah, the weather. The amount of rain, certain parts
had a lot
are getting right now is ridiculous. I think Lake Fork, if I've been hearing right or paying attention right, is high. It's got a lot of rain, and I think that's going to play havoc for anglers who are more comfortable on that lake, who've experienced on that lake. I think that, it could, really kind of, make the fish do anything. And maybe a lot of people have more of a chance at Lake Fork. So maybe,
Sure.
maybe on the leaderboard at Lake Fork, look for somebody that, we haven't really heard a lot about.
Right.
Would have been an early call. But yeah, for getting back to Lake Guntersville, I'm just kind of excited. So to answer your question more specifically, like I was saying, we got a month of weather. Water temps are going to be sort of like key. I know on Guntersville, it's notorious for a super long spawning season.
Right.
I've heard that like they can lock on beds in like the high 50s and spawn like throughout like the mid to high 70s. So I mean that's bonkers. So I mean I'm envisioning a scenario that could be, just like Lake St. Clair last year, pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn at the same freaking time.
Yeah, right.
And it's kind of your job to figure out that schizophrenic, kind of activity, which is kind of bonkers sometimes.
Sure.
But water temps are gonna tell the tale, and obviously getting on the water, for 2 or 3 days and kind of surveying the scene and seeing what's what. I don't know. I imagine I'm going to be looking for, spawning areas and, the pathways going in and the pathways going out and trying to figure out, what they're doing. I'm sure it's, most likely going to be the spawn.
Sure.
Or some bigger ones having been done and kind of scooting out from their spawning places, their spawning habitats or grounds, and probably taking the familiar pathways and routes, and
Sure.
probably be looking for the right breaks with hopefully the magic of cover and current.
Nice.
Right here.
Yeah, right on. Well, there's a whole lot of that on Guntersville, so
Oh man, dude,
it's it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
For sure, man. So if you guys are just tuning in, please go down, share the link, say what's up in the chat here. We got
What's up?
I'll say this comment in a second from Mr. Broad. We got Jim Strunk, Dustin Nichols,
Stronger.
Aaron Steiger, Duke Westcamp, Curdy Smits is in here, Christopher Dotson, Mr. Briggs, Justin
Chris
Stanley.
Dotson, the kayaking clown. Dang.
Yeah.
Man.
So just 2 comments real quick. I know I saw Aaron Steiger comment, Dusty, as a teacher, I feel you, buddy. It's tough.
Oh,
and then Jamie Broad, porn business has horrible hours, Dusty Yakker. Why we know you have a rough life.
That's right. Late nights, extra scenes, improvisation. It's just it's an actor's life.
Oh, I knew this would not be a dull show tonight, folks.
The world is a stage, Jamie.
Oh man. So I mean, what's your normal preparation for a tournament, man? Like what do you do? So you already said you're doing a bunch of study.
Yeah.
What are you doing pre-fishing and stuff, man? Are you fishing? You just scanning? I mean, what's your go-to?
It's just really hard to not like kind of have fun and live in the moment when you're on these breaks that you normally never get on, that you haven't been on for 20 years of your life.
Right.
Then you get on them and you're supposed to, dick around with some pre-fishing and stuff. And it's like, what? There's like 4 and 5 pound smallmouth swimming around and you're like, nah. So, I mean, it's a little rough that way, but, I think I've learned to have a little more discipline, have a little more, have some more reservation, if you will, when it comes to like, I got a bite there. I got to, whatever. I caught a fish here, and maybe you just kind of getting out there immediately and not kind of feeling for other things. But I think this year what I'll be doing is, ultimately fishing less and looking for like, subtleties within subtleties, like, we're looking for that juice kind of within the juice. Hey, I got a bite. Hey, I caught a fish. Cool. Let me see if there's like a little ditch over there. let me see like how long that lay down goes out. You know, let me see if there's a time consideration in the bites. You know, something like that, and just kind of mentally prepare there. Nothing. I mean, like nothing is can take the place of on the water. Like you can do all the map study. You can have really cool Google Earth images, and even like like real reliable intel and stuff like that. But you got to get on the water. I mean, like clarity and like temperature and like what the weather has been doing and what it's gonna do. I mean, that stuff's huge.
Sure.
I mean, that's why with all this rain and all this, this insanity, I mean, that's why driving down to Logan Martin like a maniac the night before might not be as much of a gamble as I'm thinking, man.
Yeah.
Just go down there and be like, whatever. It might have just as much chance as the next man,
Right. I forget who I was talking to, and they were in Tennessee, I believe, and it's raging, it's chocolate milk, and all that stuff is just going straight down that way, man. I mean, it's all the same stuff.
Duke and I hoofed it down to Chickamauga last year, and man, I mean that was a flood of biblical proportions. I mean, when we entered sort of the area, I mean, roads were closed. Stuff was just insane. And when you got to like where the launches were, like kind of like where the check-in was, I mean, like trucks were flooded, and it's a whole separate story about like how the creeks rose and all the stuff they free fishing in the tournament. But I kind of have firsthand knowledge of how that is. I mean, it gets really rough, and when you say chocolate water, I mean, geez, yeah, it's just like torrential chocolate water, and it's just like impossible to catch fish.
Well, I remember seeing, I think it might have been yourself that posted a video of like the water rising and rushing when you guys were down there. I mean, it came up like what, 7 feet overnight or something like that.
I was in Soddy Creek, and I was fishing, and I could see the water level rising. I mean, normally that's not something that you can really observe like over like an hour or two, but I mean, I could like see it over like the course of like 2 or 3 minutes, and I could see the water coming up, and I'm like, holy crap! And for a second there, I was like, that's kind of like neat, and then like I started thinking, well, that's kind of nuts. And then I saw the debris starting to come in, and the debris. I mean, and it was just a combination of just like the rise and like the darkening and the muddy of the water, and then the debris started coming in, and it was just sort of bonkers. And the fishing was kind of all for naught, and it was just a frustrating experience of like a lot of like swirling currents and just craziness.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, what are you doing during the tournament? I mean, mental preparation. I mean, I think, and I'm asking this on a personal level, and I think you and I may have talked about this a little bit, man. Like, maybe. I'm a freaking head case, dude.
yeah, man.
I think we all are. Don't get me wrong, but
I mean, I've elevated it to an art form. Like the debates I had with myself, and the mental games I play. It's not something I shy away from. I've sort of learned to embrace it. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's probably some better approaches I'd recommend to like younger people, or like, even my peers and stuff like that. But, I get sort of like a tunnel vision, like a competitive tunnel vision when I'm sort of out in the water. I don't like to look at the leaderboards. I don't like to dawdle or like do things lethargically. Like everything's purposeful. I don't like to not have my lure in the water. I don't like to like not be casting and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I on the water. I mean, when I think back to it, or when I think about it, it's almost like that tunnel vision, like sort of kind of being like maybe in the zone. I mean, is the cliche that other people maybe use, but
sure.
That's kind of how it is. I mean, maybe not every single tournament. There are some scenarios, where I'm, maybe I might casually talk, or I think, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think lacrosse was last year lacrosse at the championship, the trail championship or whatever that was. On day 2, I was just sort of like, I'd caught like limited dinks, my fish were gone, and
sure.
I sort of was just not in that zone. I was not having that sort of tunnel vision or in that zone, had a long season was sort of coming to an end, and I did find myself sort of being a little more lackadaisical, conversing with people on the water. I was sort of like anchoring by Dave Brook and just sort of just having these conversations with them, just and just really ironically enjoying the moments, just soaking it all up and soaking it all in. And
well, I know I ran into you day 2 on the water, and we sat and talked and had a conversation, and we were both kind of like, I'm out of it. What's the point, man? Let's just fish.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just fish. I wasn't sort of like trying to, go to some other spot. I really didn't have any other spots. So, there are some points where, those competitive juices can sort of cease, and, you can, and enjoy yourself maybe a little more than you typically would out there.
Right on. It's cool, man. I mean, I don't know. It's incredible to see what you did last year. So, I mean, kudos to you, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think if you have the time, you're willing to put in the time, and you're getting on these bodies of water, I think that good things can happen. So, I think
the time thing is a key, man. It's definitely a key to success for sure.
Yeah, one of the greatest resources that we have is time. So, to be able to spend it judiciously on the water, usually equates to success. So, luckily for me, I have a good foundation, like a lot of experience with fundamentals, and then I can sort of maybe more quickly apply that to these newer bodies of water I find myself on, instead of finding myself on new bodies of water but not having a solid foundation to attack them with.
Right. It makes sense, man. It makes sense. So, are you going to be fishing any local club events this year? Michigan Kayak Trail again, stuff like that?
Yeah, and I look forward to it. We were talking earlier how that's how I started out in the local trails. But with so much going on and having to cherry pick and certainly wanting to make a presence on the national scene, there's just kind of no way I could follow the schedule of multiple local trails. So this year, I won't be fishing, or I won't be a member of KBL. I'm hoping to maybe fish an open or two that they have. And as far as the Michigan Kayak Trail is concerned, I mean, I'd like to fish as many events as I could, but they have scheduling conflicts with some other things. So
gotcha.
We'll have to see how that unfolds in May, June, and July and stuff. So I'm going to try to fish some local events, but I think my focus will be more on the whole
national stuff. That's cool, man. I dig it.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I know you got a soft spot in your heart for that MKT stuff, man, because that's Smalley heaven up there,
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily that Smalley heaven. I mean, that certainly helps, but that's the area that I spent my childhood in. Like that.
Right.
That area to me represented, complete freedom from, the city and the urban environment, and it's real. I'm real sensitive to lots of heavy sound and stuff like that. So urban environments sometimes can get to me. But when I would, I mean, even now, but especially as a youth, when it was even less developed than it is now, the area of southwestern Michigan, it was. It was like nature. It was like like you could all the bullfrogs and the crickets and the smell and the lakes and the lily pads and what you looked at and the dirt roads, very different from where I came from. So for me, that area represents a lot of cool things. So when I go up and fish it, when I find success fishing it, it really ties in a lot of nostalgia and a lot of familial sentiment, and I think my dad would certainly be proud of it. There's a lot of really, really, really kind and generous, just good people that fish the trail and are part of the trail and that created the trail. And I mean, like you mentioned, the lakes. I mean, some of the lakes and the systems that I find myself in on the Michigan Trail are just really cool, and maybe not. I mean, not ones that I would call bucket list. Maybe not even ones that I've really heard of or would otherwise fish.
Sure.
So it's been real neat. But I'm from Chicago. I'm from Illinois. The Kayak Bass League is an awesome league, and it would be nice to have the time be able to fit that in the schedule. But unfortunately, that was one that I had to sacrifice.
Well, thank you for that. I know we've had conversations in the group chat that AOI is up for grabs this year because you did not become a member this year. So thank you.
Well, I mean, I think Patrick Pooty would Patrick Tarp would have something to say about not only Angler of the Year in the Kayak Bass League, but he's a beast out on the Michigan Kayak.
Dude. Yeah.
I think last year, I think in every event he finished in the money.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like that.
And he obviously was Angler of the Year, and that was really neat to watch. And something tells me I was Angler of the Year for KBL this past year, but something tells me had the schedule not sort of gone awry with respect to online cancellations and like some crazy stuff that we had. I mean, things might have played out a little different.
Sure.
But Angler of the Year to me, that's like the ultimate prize. That sort of like represents like supreme consistency.
Absolutely.
Not maybe like the fortune of a win here and there, how those go. So it does kind of stink to not be able to focus on the Angler of the Year for, a particular trail simply because it'd be hard for me to, make the events needed to try to pursue that.
Sure. No, I get that, man. And I agree with you 100%, man. Angler of the Year, and whether it be a national trail, your local club, something like that says something. And like you said, it's consistency, dude. And it's hard to be consistent like that,
The people that found themselves in the 10 this year.
The
people that found themselves at the Tournament of Champions and stuff like that. A lot of consistency. And you know what, like we were saying, not as much consistency in always being near the top, but consistency and dedication of time, of travel, of commitment. I mean, consistency, it's a full package. So, kudos to all those guys and girls doing some really cool things with how they, present themselves at the tournaments.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So there you have it. So what do you think your biggest struggle is, man, when you're out there fishing a tournament? Biggest struggle? Is it the mental game? Is it the, conditions you're fighting, things like that? You had to put your thumb on one thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would kind of be hard to do that. I think one thing, like just like a random offshoot of that comes off the top of my head is that I see a lot of pros pick apart dock, like big marinas and big dock systems.
Sure.
I see pros pick apart those docks by skipping. And while I'm not horrible at skipping, I mean I wouldn't wake up at 4 a.m. and be like, hey, honey, man, I'm gonna tear apart these docks. I'm gonna skip these docks. I'm gonna bring home $5,000. I'm gonna qualify. I can't imagine ever saying that.
Yeah,
or even being confident about that. I can imagine a scenario in which I get to the dock, it's lines in, and it's just the first one is just a ridiculous nest that I can't. I got to put the rod down, and it's something like that. So one thing I do struggle with is something tactical. It's physical. I mean, it might be kind of random, but I would love to just be able to go up to a huge marina or dock system and just pick it apart and be able to talk to a film crew and just do nothing but skip it way back in the recesses. I think that would be something I'd like to be really good at. I think another thing that I struggle with is when I make adjustments, like when I'm like, this is not working, and I think about what's going on, I'm reading the water and what might work. It's not so much making the adjustment. I think I struggle with confidence in that adjustment, because when I go out in the water and I bring my 8 to 10 rods, on a given situation. I mean, sure. I'm really religious about what it is I put on those rods the night before. Like the whole rigging process is a ritual. And I overthink it. I'll tell Maria, I'm like, yeah, I'll be in there in an hour, and it's like 4 hours. Got the headlamp on, couple glasses of Crown Royal, And I'm just, over analyzing, just like narrowing it down to like and dissecting it and like, okay, here's what's going on. So, when I have that on and I go out in the water, I mean, when that stuff doesn't work, it sort of throws a wrench in your whole religious approach.
Oh, yeah.
You start doubting God. And, so I make an adjustment, and I think where I struggle is, boom, that's the adjustment I'm going to make, boom. And like some confidence in the adjustment. So maybe I'm a little scatterbrained when it comes to that. And I think I'm not alone. I think
you're not.
How to adjust, when to adjust is a huge, issue for all of us, or many of us at least.
Yeah, I mean, I know me personally last year, that was one of the things I was conscious about at the beginning of the year was something's not working, switch it up. Don't just keep throwing the same thing.
Right.
Switch it up. Keep changing until you find something.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of success in the beginning half of the year, with top 10 finishes and stuff like you're talking about. And that I kind of stuck to what I was doing that was working for me. And I kind of went, towards the end of the season. I caught some great fish and things like that. But I mean, my success rate went down when I wasn't thinking like I was at the beginning of the season, keeping on it, changing and stuff.
Well, that certainly could be it. But I think you also need to take into consideration, and I think a lot of people need to take into consideration. I think more people than would take into consideration that a lot of things come into play when it comes to decision making and your mental game. And you were talking about the decisions you were making, in the beginning and middle versus the end. You kind of started out strong and sort of faded, and it might not be due to necessarily one thing. I think fatigue and even something as random as diet.
Sure.
And just I mean you're tireless with the podcast and stuff like that. So how we treat our bodies, how we treat our mental approach, the things that we put in our body, like how we hydrate and stuff. I mean I hate to sound like a kook like that, but I mean it's very important if you're gonna people say like oh, I mean you're living the dream. I mean I would give anything to be in your position. Right. And to a certain extent, hell yeah. I mean, I agree. Right. I mean, of course things aren't perfect. They're never perfect in anybody's. Sure. I mean, there's all types of battles and stuff and struggles and stuff like that. But I mean, for the most part, I mean, I could sort of like fish when I want to do, or when I can't, and when I want to, and I have all this time in the summer and stuff like that. But it's what people should take into consideration is the realities of the travel and the time away from home and the long hours of driving and the rigors of competition and things like that. I think it takes a toll on people in ways that maybe aren't appreciated, maybe aren't talked about a little bit, or that maybe people kind of want to push to their subconscious and not really sort of think about. So I think it's important to take care of yourself when you're kind of going headfirst into something like the national tournament trail.
I totally agree, man. I use the reference all the time. I got a good friend of mine. He used to fish the walleye tour all the time. And, he'd be gone for a week and a half at a time, fishing the tournament.
Yeah. What you have to do to be successful.
He'd be like, I'm wiped out. And I'm like, come on, man. You were just on vacation for a week.
I know you're fishing. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, right. And then I got that wide opening experience. And I talked to him about it several times last year. And I'm like, dude, I know what you're talking about.
I was saying earlier with my father, and like that quick burst into from live bait into artificial lures into being a tournament fisherman.
Yeah.
I mean, it can get crazy out there. So
yeah, definitely, man. It'll burn you out, man. It'll burn you out.
Yeah.
12, 13 hours on the water. And then, you're re-rigging for the next day, trying to find a meal in between and, trying to get some sleep and then doing that repetitively for 3-4 days and then coming home. You're just like,
right. I know you had asked me, we had talked about a little earlier, some of the topics we might be talking about. And you'd asked me, what were my thoughts on transitioning or potential transition from, a full-time job of teaching to, a full-time life on the road. And I mean, man, the realities of it are, I mean, they're real, take them into consideration. So,
right.
I'm appreciative that I sort of have this foundation, this base of experience to work with to make a decision like that. You know, if that becomes real in the next year or 2 or 3.
No, man, I can see you doing it, man. I can definitely see you doing it.
I can definitely see myself doing it. You know, I mean, I entertain it all the time. I mean, I think about it all the time. When you when you have to ask yourself, you know, what is personal happiness, or what's your definition of happiness, or what undeniably makes you happy? I mean, fishing certainly is number one. And you know, the reality of sort of being able to compete and, you know, I don't know, make a living. I don't know what that means. That it's kind of subjective, but maybe just have the security of insurance and, you know, the comfort of some sort of stipend.
Yeah, right.
Preferably from sponsors. And then, of course, the gamble of competition. I mean, the glory of winning 1 or 2 events that pretty much pay for your entry fees and your gas and some of that stuff. And then 3 or 4 months to win other ones. I mean, that's definitely a real possibility. I was, you know, one cast away from, you know, close to $20,000 more last year.
Yeah.
So, you know, who knows?
It'll be interesting, man. I'm looking forward to see what direction you go, man. I know you and I had that conversation one night after the Schaumburg show, you know, and
yes,
I was like, really? You're going to do that? And you're like, I'm thinking about it, man. I'm thinking about it. So let me ask you this, though. Let me ask you this, because you got a huge backbone support, Maria, your wife, man.
Like, oh, yeah.
I mean, what does she think about that? I was curious, and I don't think we ever talked about that. Have you talked to her about that? I mean, is she like, do what makes you happy, or is she like, Dusty, you're crazy? Get back to the classroom.
No, I mean, I don't. I mean, to answer your question, we've never sat down and talked about it like a major life event, like
sure.
You know, buying another home or having a child or something like that.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess if I'm on the spot and I had to ask, I mean, I think she would be supportive of it. I'm pretty sure she would be. I think that you know, she's seen that I have the potential to succeed, and that, you know, it's been more than a break-even thing for me. And I don't know. I mean, you know, it's you know, like I was saying earlier, at some point you sort of simply have to ask yourself, you know, what's your personal happiness worth? How you know, what are you willing to sacrifice, or how hard are you willing to sort of be flexible enough or you know, accept into change, you know, to sort of move in that direction or make a change in that direction.
I dig it, man. I dig it. I mean, I love seeing Maria and the dog at the tournaments with you. It's
Thanks,
very
man.
Cool, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only little family I have, so it's really nice that, you know, that they're able to come. It's nice to have that support system like right there.
Yeah, I mean, and I know I think we were talking about this, man. Like, you know, once in a while you're texting her when you're on the water and she tells you to calm down and just get back to doing what you do, right?
Oh, well, yeah, it's not so much calm down. We sort of just like joke, and we'll send like, you know, funny emojis, or I'll just have to like get something out real quick and then show, you know, I mean, yeah, it's just sort of it's just like a you know, a comforting thing, I suppose, you know.
No, I dig it, man. Every time before I start a tournament, you know, I'll send my wife a link to, you know, Tourney X or whatever.
Yeah.
And she watches the leaderboard, and, you know, she's like, you know, keep going. You need one more fish, or, you know, whatever. You got this, you know, just do it.
Yeah, you know, one of like we were saying, like some of the difficulties of trying to approach this from a full-time or just the realities of life on the road or the travel and stuff, like a support system. I think a support system, no matter if it's something or someone or more than one person, I think it's really, you know, I mean, not only in fishing, you know, sort of in life in general, but to recognize that and what it is. And it's a blessing if you have that while out on the road or while competing, or even with you while out on the road or competing, or even just sort of in, you know, having something like that in your life in general. I think that's true. And I know a lot, you know, just being involved in the Facebook community, in the social media community, a lot of people aren't shy about that. A lot of people do post, that they do have someone supportive at home that allows them to go fishing, or even somebody that comes with, or just somebody that encourages them to, you know, follow their passion or do what makes them happy. You know, it's really nice to see that.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%, man. I envy you. You know, I wish I had that when I was traveling. You know, I mean, it just it makes you feel at home.
Well,
I think it relaxes you a little bit.
I'll tell you what, after, you know, after like let's say Lake Ouachita, for example, like after being in what seemed like 120-degree heat, you know, and going through like the shenanigans of day one, and then like excruciating but still like jovial experience of day two, you know, being so close but still like not bad, and you know, having it be like a walking across the stage of the FL Cup and being handed a microphone, and I mean, it was great, but you know, all of that, you know, like a week of that, and then getting in the car and just giving the keys to her and being like, "Hon, just drive for 5 or 6 hours," just being like, "Bang."
Yeah.
I mean that's money. I mean that's
huge, man.
That's as huge as it could possibly get. I mean, you know, regardless of like other means of support and other ways of being there for me. I mean, just like that kind of thing alone allows you to do that. I mean, how many times would you have loved to just, you know, given the keys to someone else and
right.
crank the AC and just put the seat back and, you know.
I've had many coffees on the way home, and I drink coffee like water. And when I drink double the amount of coffee, it gets pretty ridiculous, man.
I mean,
but
we keep sort of tying back into what I'm saying, like diet and what we put in our body. One of the changes I made in the off season, I guess, if you will, sounds corny for me to say that. But, I'm going to Japan to train. No, but one of the things I've done was eliminate caffeine, and I stopped because what was happening is at work I was just drinking coffee all day. I wasn't hydrated. It was leading to all types of other problems and stuff like that. So I've been drinking a lot of tea. So I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of antioxidants in tea. I got a cool local tea merchant in town, man.
Okay.
Straight out of like the 18th century. No, they make these gourmet blends of like tea and fruit. The guy goes from all over the world and imports it. It's ridiculous, and I don't know, man. I hate to sound like like a freak or a kook or something, but I don't know.
Lifting that pinky when you're drinking your tea.
What's that?
You lifting your pinky when you're drinking that tea?
No, but I'm telling you, man, I've been hydrating. I've been just like drinking just ungodly amounts of water, and
sure.
And I think I'm feeling a lot better. I mean, I'm kind of anxious to like, you know, for energy levels and, you know, fatigue levels and stuff like that. I'm kind of anxious to get started and get out on the road and get in the swing of things.
Yeah, I need to find an alternative myself, man. I mean, I go way too hard on the coffee, and tea would be a nice alternative, I think.
Well,
so
I mean, it's sometimes I drink it. There's no caffeine in it, and like other varieties have a little bit of caffeine, but I mean, compared to coffee, it's really not that much. But I don't know, man. It's I you know, for 20, 30 years, I've been succumbing to, you know, most of the processed stuff and the, you know, and you know, garbage, the whole propaganda system of the food industry. You know how that means,
right? Oh yeah.
So I mean, you know, you got to flush it out, and you got to sort of be all about the antioxidants.
Right.
Kind of do that and try to maintain that. I think it's kind of important. So
very cool, man.
One aspect of how I'm sort of getting ready for the tournament season that is upon us.
I love it, man. So we're just over an hour, man. So let's finish this up, man. So new guy fishing any tournament series, whether it be local club, national level for 2020. Couple pieces of advice. What would you tell him, man?
Well, geez, I mean, just rewind the show and press. I mean, you know, who's this lunatic talking about all these emotional like that? I mean, I don't know, put some things into perspective. But I think, I think first and foremost, what I would tell somebody is there's a lot to say and there's a lot of advice, you know, like tactical advice. But really learn how to like live the moment, learn how to like enjoy what you're doing, learn how to like really appreciate like, you know, like just the little subtleties of the day, or like just the concept of you going out in the small intimate craft on the water and being able to fish and being able to compete and being able to carve out a little niche, you know, maybe perhaps for yourself, and
Sure.
sort of like all the stuff that comes with that, so that you don't have to maybe like relive it in your memories a year, or, you know, like or get caught up in the hustle and bustle of trying to make sure you got the latest gadget or the right rig, or that your camera setup is, you know, all cool. Just to sort of like, you know, be in the moment and kind of appreciate what you're doing, and sort of like, you know, just kind of like, you know, go down that route. And I would also recommend that to try to not bite off more than they can chew.
Sure.
If it's their you know, maybe first foray into it, I mean, there's no need to try to make every tournament. I mean, especially with what's going on now. You know? I mean, if you have the resources and you have the time, I mean, by all means, go crazy. But
Right.
Don't bite off more than you can chew. Try to maybe do what I did. Try to get involved locally, and sort of establish friendships there, establish a foundation there. Support a local tournament, support your local areas, maybe a little bit, and you know, just sort of branch out. You know how you can and how you will, but maybe also try to. I mean, I don't know what your resources are and what your wallet's like, but try to find success with mid-level gear. You know, I mean, I know some people get into it and want to buy like $600 reels and $20 rods and stuff like that, and they break the eyes, they drop them over, or, you know, they buy this kind of equipment, but they don't know the fundamentals of casting or the fundamentals of line and lure and things like that nature. So, you know, maybe start with like mid-level gear and learn to succeed with that, and sort of work your way up would be maybe some other advice.
Love it, man. I love it. Solid. Well, you guys, Dusty, you wanna shout out anybody, man? Sponsors, all that stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think first and foremost, I have a lot of affiliations and whatnot, but I mean, when it comes to like genuine support, I get that from a couple sources. I get that from Hobie Fishing, and I get that from Ketch and Ketch Outdoors and Ketch Products Inc. I mean, these are people who have shown like a demonstrable support for me and appreciation, and even a love for me. So it's really cool to be able to you know, belong to Hobie and be affiliated with Ketch, and to sort of, you know, just be there along with them for the ride that they're sort of taking me on. The Hobie platform, I think, is like the ultimate to fish off of. I've said that before. I just can't imagine fishing off anything else.
Sure.
And I think that there's really a lot to be done and seen as far as what we're going to be doing with Ketch and Ketch Outdoors this year in terms of film and production and digital media and things like that. So I'd certainly like to recognize them and their assistance and their help. It's really cool. I'd like to give a shout out to teams like Yakker and Railblazer for their support. Companies like Kayak, who I support and use all the time. And, you know, people like that. And just the kayak community in general, I think. It's a real supportive.
Yeah. Heck yeah, man. And if you guys are listening to this, you can go back last week. I had Duke and Vasily on from Ketch Outdoors. We were talking about filming and their upcoming stuff last week. So go back, check that out if you missed it. I know Mr. Westcamp was in the chat this evening, a.k.a. Mr. Hams.
Oh, you know what? I hate to interrupt you, but speaking of that, I also would like to mention Dakota Lithium, because that's who's going to be powering me this year. So
very cool.
I don't require much power. I mean, I don't have like a trolling motor or anything like that, but you know, just running my Garmin's.
Yeah, heck yeah.
I have the reliability of Dakota Lithium for the year. So
you said Garmin's. You running two?
Well, no. I mean, I'll have the 360 and I'll have my PA. So I'll have.
Oh, okay, yeah. I got you.
I'll have the 73 on the PA and the 93 on the 360.
Nice, love it.
Maybe some lights too. So we'll see.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, Dusty, thanks again for joining us tonight, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure, man. I know we've been trying to do this for a while. You and I have kind of gone back and forth, and
Yeah,
we finally ran into each other at the show, and it was like, hey, we need to do this, dude.
for sure, man. For sure.
So I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate all you do. I mean, there's a lot that you bring to the sport and to the table.
Thanks, man.
So it's really nice to sort of see you hustling out there, and
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. I appreciate that very much, man. Yeah, it's definitely a grind in a different way. It's.
I know. I can imagine.
It is what it is, man. But I can't do it without the assistance. Shout out to, I think it was Josh Eldridge, Brad Hicks, Susie. We're in the chat tonight, running the chat, responding to all you guys. So I got to say thanks to them. Paddle and Fin doesn't operate without all the other hosts. So huge shout out to them. Huge shout out to you guys for tuning in this evening. We wouldn't do this if you guys weren't listening, man. And it just keeps growing and getting better. So thanks everybody for spreading the word, sharing the stream tonight. The live stream's gaining a little traction. It's something new, something different. If you're just tuned in, you missed part of this. This will still get uploaded to the normal podcast platform tomorrow morning. So be sure to tune in there. Huge shout out from us to Ketch, TRC Covers, Hammered Lures, and JigMasters Jigs. And so that wraps up another episode number 37 for the year already. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Till next time, tight lines, smooth paddling. Peace. Go check out the website, guys. Paddle, the letter N and fin.com. Also check out YouTube, youtube.com/paddle and fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest, feel free to email us at paddle, the letter N and fin @gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're doing giveaways, announcements, things like that at Facebook and Instagram at paddle and fin. Shout out to our show supporters, Rocktown Adventures, Loveland Canoe and Kayak, Hammered Lures, Fish Mob Lures, TRC Covers, Ketch Products. Go to ketchproducts.com. You could put the Paddle and Fin logo right on your catch board. Don't forget to go over and pick up your JigMasters Jigs. Use promo code PNF20 and save 20% today. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. It helps grow the audience, helps others find our podcast. So please drop a 5-star rating in on the podcast platform you're listening on. Don't forget about the recycled plastics program, you guys. Take your used plastic baits, put them in an envelope, mail them to the address in the show notes. Our man Eric Richards at Hammered Lures melts those down, makes new baits, and donates them to various chapters of Heroes on the Water.